Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is December 27th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you, and we do what we do here at the Dan Clements Show. Knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade folks of the truth, and I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the chilly, or should I say cold, Central Susquehanna Valley in the Great Keystone State. Woke up this morning to 12 degrees this morning, and it's supposed to get even chillier towards the weekend when that Alberta Clipper comes through. We're supposed to be down close to zero over the weekend and into next week. So we're really going to test this new furnace out in the basement. I have every confidence that it'll keep us warm. And I also have every confidence it'll use as much propane as it takes to keep us warm during that time. Oh, my folks. I've been having a good week so far, and I'm still having a very good week. I haven't been really hammered too much by my social media antagonists. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know. Maybe I'm not doing enough to provoke them. I don't actively provoke people. I want them to think about what they're doing, but I don't actively provoke folks. So if you get provoked, that's on you, not me. And I always try to never let somebody else's words have power over me, as far as from a human being, let's say, or from my detractors. I do allow certain words to have power over me, and that's by my choice. But over social media, some of the things that I've been called over the years, some of the arguments, some of my arguments that have been called into question, the way they're called into question, and no reasoned response is given, along with all the name calling and everything like that. I just don't allow that to have power over my life. And I'll address it. Make no mistake about it, I will address it, but I just don't, I just refuse to have it, or to allow it to have power over my life. It just is not going to happen. And I think a lot of the problems in the world would go away if people would just take this attitude that as long as you don't physically aggress against me, we're okay. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. You can use all the words you want. You're not going to bother me. You might bother me, but you aren't going to harm me. And it's on me on how I react to that. And I have some stuff in the show notes page. Today's going to be more of a general, just a news and commentary program. I titled the show, Israel, Trump's Polls, GPS Dossier, or Taxes, and Graham to Rosie. I actually should say Earth to Rosie O'Donnell, Earth to Rosie O'Donnell, but Franklin Graham had something to say to her about her tweets to Speaker Paul Ryan, which, weren't with the best intentions, as it were. And so, we're all the time, the regressive Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, you name them, they're out there. They're sycophants in the lamestream media like CNN. They try to use words to persuade folks of things that aren't so. Nancy Pelosi, this tax bill is equivalent to Armageddon. It'll just destroy us. I have an article in here, a couple different articles about CNN. Worries that the tax bill will help GOP, hints at conspiracy theory. That this is just a conspiracy theory. That this tax bill is only going to help the GOP. If Republicans and other folks, like Constitution Party members who are running for office, actually use the fact that not a single Democrat voted to lessen the tax burden of the American people, it's going to benefit anybody who stands opposed to the Democrats in the elections. Because even the blue-collar Democrats, the run-of-the-mill, everyday, flyover country Democrats, they like tax cuts too, because it puts more money in their pocket. And so they are. I think they took off a little bit over Christmas, but today they're getting hard back at it. with the taxes being a conspiracy theory. There's a Democrat who claims that Trump's trying to shut down the entire government so he can become a tyrant. And I was reading that, and I got to thinking just before I signed on to the show here that over the past 8 years, before President Trump became actually over the past 9, the prior administration, let's put it this way, with Barack Obama and all his socialist acolytes that he had put in place, I literally felt like I was walking around on pins and needles with that man in office, waiting for the country to tip over into a tyranny, a despotic, authoritarian regime. Everything politically that Barack Obama did, whether through regulations, how he was actually regulating things with unconstitutional executive orders, rewriting laws, adding 2 laws like the Affordable Health Care Act, all the things that he had done during his administration to try to bring down America, and a lot of these things do have something to do with the breakdown or trying to break down traditional family values, the nuclear family, when it comes to issues like gay marriage, the LGBTQ agenda, transgender dysphoria, anything, Islam, refugees, anything that the Democrats and especially Barack Obama and his sycophants, socialistic sycophants, supporters, could do to destroy Western culture. And whatever it is, it didn't matter to them what the vehicle was as long as the United States was weakened. So they could come in like the White Knights and try to rescue her. But the problem is, and this is the problem with socialism, and this is the problem with what's going on today with like the issue of like net neutrality. There's too much groupthink going on. There's too much of a mob mentality that is going on with pro-net neutrality folks. I'm not saying all of them, but there's too many people out there that don't know what they don't know, and yet they still want to talk about it like they're authoritative in that. Now, I don't know everything about why they wanted net neutrality. I don't know everything about the internet, but I do know how to research. And the more I research in it, the more I find that net neutrality and the reasons for it are a lie. But when you try to bring these up to people, when you try to bring these up to folks, they don't care. Because all their friends believe the same way they believe. All their favorite YouTube hosts believe the same way they believe. So you have this mob or this herd mentality going on. And the whole time Barack Obama was in office, this is how they operated with this herd mentality. I mean, for goodness sakes, folks, he got elected because of the herd mentality. How many people did you, and I hate to readdress this, but how many people did you hear say that they voted that on news, on video, on camera, hot mic and everything, that they voted for Barack Obama because it was a historical moment in America that they voted for the first black president. It didn't matter how bad politically that person was, and that's the way they were thinking. And that is no way to choose a candidate. Just like Hillary Clinton was, before the election even happened last November 8th, she was already crowned the Queen of America. She had the presidency in a walk. And I still wonder how, and she didn't win, thank God she didn't win, but if she would have, Bruce, I hope you're sitting down. I'm going to put a what if out here. I'm going to give you a warning. Sit down before you fall down. What if Hillary had won the presidency of the United States? How many people, how many women, men, whatever, virtue signaling Americans would have said that they voted for Hillary Clinton because this was a historical moment that she's the first woman president of the United States? Regardless of her politics, they wanted to be on what they considered the right side of history. So the last presidency, the last 8 years, or the whole 8 years of Barack Obama, I literally lived my life on pins and needles to figure out or try to find out what the next shoe was going to drop of his march to totalitarianism. And yet we got We got Democrats in the government that are saying that Donald Trump wants to become a tyrant. I don't know too many tyrants that deregulate things, that actually give control back to the folks in the economy that know best how to run these things. I really don't know too many tyrants that do that. I don't know too many tyrants that lessen the tax burden on their citizens. If he's trying to be a tyrant, if President Trump, and I don't believe it, but if he's trying to be a tyrant, he's doing a very, very bad job of being a tyrant. I mean, it's he needs to go back and take some lessons from Uncle Joe and Stalinist Russia, or Mao, or Pol Pot, or any other number of dictators we've had around the world. He needs to go take some lessons from them. Maduro, Hugo Chavez, Castro. They know what being an authoritarian despot is. How to be tyrannical to their people. All those names that I mentioned. So again, the hysteria out there is laughable to me. When I read stories like that Democrat claims Trump's trying to shut down entire government to become tyrant. They are, and I'm going to just turn it right around on them. They are mad because their person didn't get into the presidency to extend Obama's presidency, because they liked what Obama was doing. They liked the way the country was going. They liked the socialism that was being put forth by the federal government. And it's, you know what, folks, it's really no different from when it comes to the issue of Israel. There are a lot of misnomers going on about what Israel is and what it isn't. The Israel of today, that we have today, does not resemble the Israel of the Old Testament. Because in the Old Testament, they had the temple, they had the Levitical priesthood, and they were to follow the Old Testament and God's Word. But once Christ came and nailed the old law to the cross and delivered a new law in the New Testament and delivered us into the Christian dispensation, the time and the purpose for the Jewish people, the temple, Israel at that time was done. It was finished. God had accomplished his purpose for them. And that all culminated into the birth, the life, the death, and the resurrection, burial and resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Once he fulfilled all prophecies, he nailed the old law to the cross. So the Israel today is not the Israel of the Old Testament. That's first and foremost, you need to get through your heads and in your minds. But too many people in the United States look at Israel as being the Israel of the Old Testament. That they are God's chosen people, and they have a special relationship and a special protection that only Jehovah God can give them, or would give them. And that's just not the case. That's just not the case. If it is, if the Old Testament law was still in force, then Christ died in vain, the apostles preached in vain, and believed in vain, and we also believe and preach in vain, if that's the case. And I know it not to be the case because of my study and understanding of Scripture. So we got this big brouhaha over the Middle East. And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying Israel doesn't have a right to exist today. I'm not saying that. You know, the UN in their infamous wisdom, 1949 set up the new Jewish state. And Jews were allowed to come back, and they've had to fight to keep hold of what they got ever since then. And again, if the UN wanted to set them up, that's fine. If Israel wants to remain a state, that's fine too. But I support them as an ally in a state, not that they have a special dispensation or relationship with God. Because that sort of muddies the waters of just about every decision that anybody makes who thinks that way. And because of that, and the moving to, and look, I think Israel, because they're a sovereign state, they can put their capital anywhere they want, regardless of what the Palestinians think. As far as I'm concerned with the Palestinians, and this may be a little harsh, but this problem should have been solved a long time ago. I'm not talking about genocide. I'm talking about they should have been forcibly removed from Israel, and they're Arabs. Let the other Arab countries figure out what to do with them. Is that being harsh? It might be harsh. But the Palestinians have never shown any inclination to live in peace with the Jews. I'm not saying the people, I'm talking about the government. Has never shown any inclination to live with the Jewish people over in Israel in peace. So if they're not going to live with them in peace, why should they be tolerated? Why should they be left there? Let them go be integrated in Jordan or Iran or Iraq or Egypt. With their Islamic brethren, their Muslim brethren. And again, there's a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of wrong think that's going on out there when it comes to different situations like this. It really is, and it's really, really a shame. It really is. Today's show is being brought to you by the Dan Clement Show Cafe Press site. One of the ways you can help support the show, and I was trying to get this up a while ago, but I finally did get it up, is by buying my swag. I have some reasonable prices over there for printed materials, and I went through each one of these and I searched for the best, in my opinion now, the best t-shirts. They had a very slim number of hats to choose from, and I emailed them that we need more choices to choose from, and I got to go back and check. The coffee mugs are fantastic. I have an older one that when I was back to basic, I bought one from my Cafe Press store to see what it was, and those white mugs are fantastic. The travel mugs look good. Mouse pad, women's t-shirts, men's t-shirts, hoodies, the whole 9 yards. So if you want to support the Dan Clement Show, you can go over to danclementshow.com and on the menu bar, click on the Cafe Press widget. It'll take you over to my Cafe Press site, and you'll be able to help support the show by buying the swag that I'm offering. And we're going to hopefully in the near future here keep adding some more items to that store. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 2 verses 16 through 18. And this is sort of carrying on about the Magi and the wise men that were coming to visit Jesus. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, and just to catch you up on the story, the wise men were warned by an angel to go another way back home to where they're going and avoid King Herod, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all male children who were in Bethlehem and in all the districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken of by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, the voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are no more. And so this is more prophecy that Jesus Christ fulfilled, and just by the fact that he was born, prophecy was being fulfilled, whether he had a hand in it or not. Today's quote mail comes from Martin Luther, that the Creator himself comes to us and becomes our ransom. This is the reason for our rejoicing. And this isn't something we should only be rejoicing about God among us, about Emmanuel being born in a manger. This isn't something that's seasonal. This isn't something we should, celebrate it, 1 or 2 days a year, and then put the idea away for the rest of the time and live our lives the way we want to live our lives. Christianity doesn't work that way, and it never has worked that way. Today's short Bible lesson comes from G.E. Watkins himself over at gewatkins.net. And, excuse me, folks, I had to let that one slip out. Sorry about that. Unto us a child is born, and the text is Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 through 7. And I'll just read that real quick. It'll give you a flavor of where he's taking this. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end. Upon the throne of David and over his kingdoms, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Now let me point one real quick thing out about this and let you go do your own studies on this. When he talks about upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, that his kingdom will have, his government, his kingdom will have no end. Back in the book of Jeremiah, God told Jeremiah from henceforth that nobody shall prosper on the earthly throne of David, period. So this is just another indication that Christ's kingdom was not going to be a physical kingdom. It's a spiritual kingdom. Just throwing that out there for you guys to think about. So all these are on the show notes page over at thedanclemenshow.com. And if I'm still working on the show notes page over there. I'm still working on the website. I'm having to post the show notes as a post so they show up in the one section. And then in order for folks to download the podcast, like with an RSS feed, I have to, again, redo everything over on the podcast. But I only put the audio up on the podcast now, not the show notes page. So if you get a little confused when you're over there, hopefully you don't. Hopefully I got everything straightened out, or will have today. I'll have everything straightened out where everything's working. And then I got to go back through and do some more tweaking on taking links off, putting links back on to the podcast. So because we'd actually switched over from Blog Talk Radio over to Seriously Simple podcasting, and all the links on the show notes pages that I had before with the audio are bad links. So I'm just going through and taking them out. So that's the only main difference over there on the new website as far as the new look of the website. I'm still at the same place, same address, danclemenshow.com. Okay. I have a book, or I have a recommendation here. Let me see if I have this up. Yeah, I don't need to really put it up over on the screen there. But this is by Ryan T. Anderson over at thepublicdiscourse.com. And you've heard me use articles from thepublicdiscourse.com. They're a subset of the Witherspoon Institute. And they have some really good information, some really good thought-provoking information over there. This article, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to put it up to you here. Refreshing, rejuvenating, and improving our public discourse. Holiday book recommendations by Ryan T. Anderson, and he has this over in the book reviews at thepublicdiscourse.com. Now, if you recognize that name, Ryan T. Anderson, he's also with the Heritage Foundation, and he does a lot of research into the family structure, the LGBTQ question, marriage, the whole nine yards, and he does a very, very good job of putting up arguments for the family and against like gay marriage and issues like that. And he posted this on the 21st of this month. Public Discourse is the online journal of the Witherspoon Institute of Princeton, New Jersey. For the past 9 years, we've been publishing thoughtful and accessible essays on some of the most important questions facing our country, but we don't do it alone. We have the backing of an entire Witherspoon Institute, and as we head into the Christmas break, we ask them to recommend some of the books they enjoy. So it goes down through a lot of the contributors and authors of these books. They go down, that are authors that submit articles over to Public Discourse. They ask them what you would read over the Christmas break, and there's a bunch of them in here. And one of them that I really want to get is Ryan T. Anderson's "When Harry Became Sally," responding to the transgender movement. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing that. I want to just click on that and kick that up over here on my browser to see what's going on there. So there's a lot of good books, it looks like, on here, and it's actually it's out now. You can actually order it on Amazon, and I'll try to remember to put the link up to that in Amazon for you since I mentioned it on the show. But there's a lot of, I was reading down through here, and there's a lot of good books on there. Matter of fact, the last one in there is from the founder and editor of Public Discourse, Ryan T. Anderson. He makes more books. He created an entire page over at Amazon. I'll put that up for you. Let me just. I don't know if this is it's a recommendations. But that's the first time I've seen a recommendations page. So the whole recommendation page by Ryan T. Anderson. So I just thought, it'd be a good article for you guys to go peruse. That'll be at the top of the list at the DanClementShow.com show notes page when I get it up there later today. Dave, wake up. Dave said he was watching an old show and thought it was alive all the time he was watching it. This tells you how good I am, right? All right, let me get another swig of coffee here and get to it. A lot of the things today, they've been in the news or just coming up into the news. So I just wanted to hit on some of these things while we're talking about it and spend some more time on other issues there. As you know, in the UN, the United States has declared they're going to move the embassy over to Jerusalem, the new Israeli capital. Of course, and if you didn't know this, you must be woefully ill-informed. The Islamic world is up in arms about this. They really are. But there are other countries that are following suit with America. That we're moving our embassy over to Jerusalem. And look, I'm not going to say that these countries know where they're getting their foreign aid from. I'm just not going to say that. But it seems to me like Guatemala, they know who's buttering their bread. And CNSNews.com, Patrick Goodenough, on Christmas Day posted this, Guatemala follows U.S. lead on Jerusalem. Netanyahu, it's only the beginning. After the Guatemalan President Jimmy Morales announced his country will follow President Trump's lead on Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move its embassy to the city, Prime Minister Benjamin. Let me stop the reading here. Every time I ever hear any news people speak, it's always Benjamin. It's Binyamin, Netanyahu. Benny, we can call him Uncle Benny. Suggested that the logjam is starting to break. Morales, an evangelical Christian, announced on his Facebook page that during a conversation with Netanyahu, they discussed the excellent relations that we have had as nations since Guatemala supported the creation of the State of Israel. One of the most important topics was the return of the embassy of Guatemala to Jerusalem, he added. So I inform you that I have instructed the Chancellor to initiate the respective coordination so that may be. Addressing Israel's Knesset on Christmas Day, Netanyahu said, God bless you, my friend, President Morales. God bless both our countries, Israel and Guatemala. We are waiting for you here in Jerusalem. So we have that there. And again, we also have, some people call it threats, some people call it gentle persuasion or suggestions, as it were. But Nikki Haley, at the behest of the President of the United States, warned the countries that voted against Israel making Jerusalem the capital, and also condemning anybody that moves their embassies to Jerusalem, that they're taking names. We give out billions of dollars a year in foreign aid, which to me, I think that's unconstitutional. But leaving that argument aside for a second, I think it's also very bad policy to continue to give money to countries that do not have our best interests at heart. And there's a lot of these countries out there that are going to be, that do not have our best interest at heart. So this is actually going to be an issue for them, with us moving our embassy and other folks moving their embassies there too. And again, I'm not saying Guatemala's doing this because they know their foreign aid bread's being buttered, because they did support the creation of the State of Israel back, 1949. But they do get foreign aid from us. Now, having said what I said, And again, if you didn't see this coming, uh, I don't know what to say to you. You know, that you're blind, or you're just not following news, or, you know, don't even have an inkling of what's going on outside of social media, where you don't. And honestly, folks, there are, and I don't understand this. I just don't understand this. There are folks on social media that never look at news. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Palestinian leader orders staff to cut diplomatic ties with U.S. at all levels, and One American News Network is reporting this today. The leader of the Palestinian Authority orders his staff to sever all ties with U.S. diplomatic personnel. On Tuesday, President Mahmoud Abbas instructed Palestinian officials to cease contact with U.S. representatives at all levels. This comes in response to President Trump's decision to designate Jerusalem as the Israeli capital earlier this month. The move will also include relations between American diplomats and Palestinians at the U.S. consulate in East Jerusalem. The United States is no longer an honest mediator in the peace process, announced President Abbas. We will not accept any plan put forward by the United States because of their partisan position and due to this violation of international law. Abbas also claimed he, quote, not only closed the door, but drew away the key. His comments was made in response to the possibility of restoring U.S.-Palestinian relations moving forward. White House officials say they know they are now looking at different Palestinians to contact. So if Abbas ain't going to work with them, they're going to look for other ones to work with than these Palestinians. And again, it's not in violation of international law. If Israel wants to move their capital to Jerusalem, they have every right to do so, and as a sovereign nation, we have the right to put our embassies in any cities that we want. Again, how is this violation of international law? And again, these guys kill me. They have done nothing to promote the peace process. And again, you have to give kudos to Israel for putting up with these folks as long as they have. And I'm not saying, and I know some of my detractors might be saying I'm suggesting this, I'm not saying that they need to commit any type of genocide or anything like this. I think they just need to go in and move them out. Like I said, send them to one of the other countries. They're one of their neighboring Arab countries that are around them. See if they'll give them a spot to live in. You know, and see if they'll honestly, let Iraq, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, one of these other countries, let them take them in, give them a spot, and see what happens if they start acting up and shooting missiles and rockets into the other Arab cities. Saudi Arabia would be another one. See what happens. Quite honestly, folks, I don't see that the other countries being as tolerant as Israel has been over the years. Really don't think so. It's an article out of the Washington Free Beacon. The Iran echo chamber smears Political magazine. And this is by Matthew Continetti over at the Free Beacon, posted the 22nd of this month. Nothing has been more tedious over the last year than the constant reminders that good journalism is now more important than ever. The implication, of course, is that solid, groundbreaking reporting was not as essential so long as the liberal Democrat was in power. I've long assumed that the factums mouthing such cliches lack the self-awareness of understanding and the true import of the words. But maybe I've been wrong. Recent days brought evidence that no liberals really mean it. The only meaningful investigative work is that which reflects poorly on Republicans. Earlier this week, for example, Political magazine published a story by Josh Meyer headlined "The Secret Backstory of How Obama Let Hezbollah Off the Hook." This epic and copiously sourced piece relates how, in its determination to secure a nuclear deal with Iran, that the Obama administration derailed the ambitious law enforcement campaign targeting drug trafficking by the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah, even as Hezbollah, not the Obama administration, was funneling cocaine in the United States. The law enforcement program in question is called Project Cassandra, which for 8 years used wiretaps, undercover operations, and informants to map Hezbollah's illicit networks with the help of 30 U.S. and foreign security agencies. However, as investigators came closer to unraveling the globe-spanning conspiracy, the Justice Department declined requests by Project Cassandra and other authorities to file criminal charges against major players such as Hezbollah's high-profile envoy to Iran, a Lebanese bank that allegedly laundered billions in alleged drug profits, and a central player in the U.S.-based cell of the Iranian paramilitary Quds Force. Linger over that last item for a second. Myers cites dozens of interviews and documents as evidence. He quotes a veteran U.S. intelligence operative, the sort of guy whose very utterance is anonymously paraded in the newspapers and magazines so long as it's anti-Trump, who says this was a policy decision, it was a systematic decision, and the reason for this systematic decision presumably was to make Hezbollah, Iran's backers, more willing to deal with the Obama administration on nukes. And again, this is incredible, folks. And you don't hear, I've heard a smattering about what's going on with this, but in the mainstream media, you don't hear anything about this because it paints their guy in a bad light. You know, and is this just one of these one more non-scandals that the Obama administration was a part of, not a part of? Myers points to congressional testimony from former Treasury official Kathleen Bauer, who said last February these investigations were tamped down for fear of rocking Iran and jeopardizing the nuclear deal. President Obama, in other words, slow-walked counter-narcotics efforts for the inane greater good of paying Iran billions to pretend to shut down its nuclear program for 10 years. This is the very definition of stupid stuff. Mayer is not an ideologue, not a partisan, not a quack. He worked for the Los Angeles Times, NBC News, and the Medill National Security Journalism Initiative before joining Politico as a senior investigative reporter. His Twitter feed contains plenty of criticisms of President Trump and congressional Republicans, and his story is solid. He explores different angles and gives his subject fair comment. He produced a classic example of good journalism that our betters tell us that we need more than ever. Except our betters don't like it. Not one bit, because it reflects poorly on the most significant yet dubious and controversial achievement of Barack Obama's second term. In a tactic familiar to opponents of the Iran deal, the criticism is aimed not at the facts behind Myers' article, but at Myers himself. It's a shabby neocon hit piece, says Valerie Plames, bestie Joe Crinicone. A disgusting hit job by the cabal of people with this agenda, and by the reporter who paid lip service to the criticisms of this group, says Brian O'Toole, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Neocon, cabal, I wonder whom these guys are referring to. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Non-fact-based anti-Iran deal propaganda, sneers former Deputy National Security Advisor and creative writing expert Ben Rhodes. The story is so manufactured out of thin air that it's hard to push back except to say that it's a figment of the imagination of two very flawed sources, says Tommy Viator, who has a podcast. Note that Viator is obviously wrong. The piece was far more than two very flawed sources. Note as well that neither Rhodes nor Viator ever actually bothered to challenge those sources or the facts provided to the Politico. Now, let me stop the reading there. The reason why they don't do that is because they're using Slick Willie's playbook of go after the person who is supplying the information, not the information itself. Because 9 times out of 10, you can't refute the information because of the sources and the information you actually have. So if you can't refute that, let's destroy the person that's actually delivering that. You know, the politics of personal destruction. And this is something that Democrats have honed to a fine art. Okay? Viator went on to tell Meyer over Twitter that Meyer's on-the-record sources have disclosed anti-Iran deal bias. And Ned Price, who worked for Rhodes, called the political article an anti-Iran deal screed, based on sources with undisclosed anti-Iran deal bias. For shame. Before we go any further, let me disclose my anti-Iran deal bias right now. A Twitter lefty named Adam Kahn expanded on these McCarthy-like observations, warning that if journalists go out of their way to hide experts links to donors' agendas, that should be a big red flag. Writers should know better than to quote the cabal of neocon donors with agendas at this point. So weak was the response to Meyer's scoop that by the end of their Twitter exchange, Viator was wishing him happy holidays and saying it's not personal, just disagree on policy. Viator missed the memo. We say Merry Christmas in Trump's America. Besides, Meyer wasn't writing about policy. He was relating information. What former Obama officials were reacting to wasn't some innovative argument against the Iran deal, but damning evidence of Obama's reckless regard for national security in pursuit of a fantastic rapprochement with Iran. And their outrage reminds us that the left needs now more than ever isn't journalism, it's resistance to Trump. And this, again, and as I was saying at the top of the show, at the beginning of the show, this is something that the 8 years of the Obama administration, I felt like I was walking around on pins and needles. And here's another good example. And I went back and looked at some of these Twitter feeds, and again, Matthew does a really good job of pointing out that they didn't refute the facts of the story. And this is a pattern with lefties. This is a pattern with Obamanites. They don't refute the facts because you can't refute them. Once they start dipping into the facts, they might slip up and show their hand and expose more facts that may not have been in evidence before. So instead of doing that, they just go after the source of the facts. They either go after the writer of the article or the investigator that was doing the investigation, or they try to go after the people who were their anonymous sources. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And the problem, and this is, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos. I have been for a long, long time. And one of the biggest issues that people have is called doxing. And that is, doxing is no more complicated than documenting personal facts about an individual or individuals. And what I'm saying about that is, now everybody knows I live around Sunbury, Pennsylvania. I can't hide that fact. I don't give out my personal address. I don't give out too much personal information at all, for fear people might go after somebody I know on their Facebook or Twitter and just totally put out false allegations. And this is another thing with doxing, about the false allegations that are put out, along with the documentation of a person's, where they work, their work phone numbers and whatever. And we've seen in the past, we have clear video evidence, especially during the TARP and the bank bailouts and everything like that. Some of these bankers, their home addresses were being given out, and people were protesting on private property on these folks' lawns, their front lawns, intimidating their wives and children, and causing a very dangerous situation, in my opinion. And this is all because somebody was doxing somebody. Remember up in Connecticut, where that journalist posted all the addresses of concealed carry permit holders in Connecticut. Why did he do that? Why did they do that? And again, we're going right back to an echo chamber, and I love the title of this, The Iran Echo Chamber Smears Political Magazine. They think the Iran deal that President Trump undid, that President Obama was getting in bed with, they think that was the best thing since sliced bread. And if even a portion of what's true in this report by Mr. Meyer, if only a portion of this is true, we got some real problems in the Obama administration. There was some actual laws being broken. Now I go clear back to Ronald Reagan, and the Iran-Contra controversy that was going on back then. I'm not saying, Ronald Reagan had his sins, and he had his issues I didn't agree with. But what happened, and I don't want to compare the two, saying one's better or worse than the other. They both violated law, and it should have never happened. Oliver North took the hit for it instead of Ronald Reagan, but it happened under Ronald Reagan's watch, so you can't totally divorce Ronald Reagan from this, all right? But the Democrats were just frothing at the mouth to do anything to get Ronald Reagan and possibly impeach him. I mean, to literally do anything. And this is what's happening now with Donald Trump. And it's this whole mentality. Whatever it takes. If we have to lie, cheat, or steal to do it, we're going to do it to get Donald Trump impeached because we don't agree with his policies. And again, Myers in this article here, he wasn't going after policy, he was going after hard fact, what was going on. That President Obama was allowing Hezbollah to run drugs into the United States, and then that money was being laundered back to Iran. And we had a president that authorized the running of guns into Mexico, fast and furious, through Mr. Eric Holder, the AG at the time. And yet, I have friends and family that tell me that the Obama administration didn't have any scandals whatsoever. There's a serious problem. There is a serious problem with folks on the political left in this country. And it is usually, and the more I think about it, the more I'm looking back and I'm looking at present times right now, the more I'm believing it's more of a herd mentality than is anything else. People have made themselves so busy in life that they don't want to take the time to find out what exactly is going on around them. So they rely on dubious sources. And I do say dubious because it's dubious to them because they don't check them out. They have an idea what they think might be right or wrong, but they don't know. They don't know what's right or wrong. But they have this idea that, this, and this is okay, this other stuff isn't. And for some reason, the generation behind me, the millennials, and the generation next behind them, has gotten this idea that socialism's okay. That it's okay if the ends justify the means, the government can do whatever they want. Presidents can do whatever they want. And this is a dangerous idea to have. It really is. So when we have stories come out like this, and instead of looking in to see if it's true or not, we get personal smears and attacks from the left because their man's being brought to task or trying to be brought to task. And in their minds, President Obama could do no wrong. It's just like the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. They patted themselves on the back from the time they signed. The Democrats crammed this down the Americans' throats. Still today, that Barack Obama is the savior of medical and savior of health care for the American people because he gave everybody health care. He didn't give anybody anything. They mandated it. You had to have insurance. You had to buy insurance or we're going to charge you. We're going to fine you. We're going to tax you. And this is the funny thing about it. The court said it wasn't a fine, it was a tax. And Congress has the right to tax. Okay. So if Congress has the right to tax, Congress also have a right to do away with the tax. So they've done away with in the GOP tax bill that was initiated by Donald Trump. They have in there that they cut out the individual mandate. You'll no longer be required to buy insurance or be fined or taxed because you don't have it. So you can't on one hand pat yourself on the back and say, oh, look, we gave America health insurance. Look what good boys and girls we are. And not talk about, well, it was mandated. It was either you have it or else type thing. They're literally, or I should say figuratively, holding a gun to your head because of that. Now, switching gears here a little bit, how do Americans feel about Trump? A story by James Barrett over at dailywire.com. I guess that would actually depend on your side of the political divide, what you're actually looking for. I want to jump down in here. As of December 7th, Real Clear Politics average of the key national polls calculates Trump's overall job approval at minus 19.2 points. 38.3% approving, 57.5% disapproving, and about an 8-point drop from earlier October and a few points worse than his average since May. His best approval rating of the eight most recent surveys is 43%. Rasmussen, which surveys only likely voters and thus has been one of the more reliable pollsters, has frequently given Trump more favorable numbers than most other polls, and that proves true against this week, though not by a significant margin. Trump finally broke even in the poll mid-April to 50-50, but slipped to the low 40s and even the high 30s in July. On December 8th, the tracking survey shows him at minus 11 points, or 42 to 56, 3% worse than a month ago. The survey continues to find that far more people strongly disapprove than approve of his handling of the presidency. Rasmussen provides the details. There's a graph below. Now, I just want to say a few things here. When you have the overwhelming vast majority of the lamestream media beating on you and beating on you and beating on you, I think because of that, I think those approval numbers that he has, like 38%, okay, I think those are, pretty good, 38.3%. With all the negative press that he gets from the lamestream media, all the negative press that Democrats give him when they get in front of a mic or they have a chance to go on a talk show, it's a wonder he has 38% approval ratings, in my opinion. In my opinion. And the reason why I say that is, here again is another example, I believe, and I'm not trying to be harsh about this, but reality is reality. I still have far too many friends that rely on CNN for their number one source for news and information. And if you're going to rely on a flawed news agency like CNN is, you're going to have flawed thinking. Your brain's like a computer, junk in, junk out. Now, if they get away from them, now I'm not saying I don't use CNN. I'm not saying I don't watch CNN videos and stuff or read their articles that they put out. But most of the time, I read their news stuff for comic relief, not for information. I'm not saying they don't get a good story or they don't do a good job of the story every now and then. But the overwhelming majority of the things I've seen out of CNN are junk. And that's why I use, I don't have cable TV, and I'm on the internet, and that's why I use One American News Network. But they're a right-wing network. Yeah, but if you've ever watched their coverage, they're pretty fair. And they don't try to hide their bias. The biggest problem I have with lamestream media personnel, reporters and journalists and stuff like that, is they want folks to believe that they're nonpartisan, that they don't have a bias, that they're reporting the news, fair and balanced, as Fox News would say. But they're anything but. They have a political agenda, and they have, and they use their position to meet their end wants, needs, and desires, depending on the situation. With Trump, they want Trump out. They don't like him, and the reason why they don't like him, and even some of the, and I won't say some, most of the established Republicans don't like him because they can't control him. Democrats definitely can't go up to Capitol Hill and threaten him. Threaten him with what? Well, we're going to impeach you. Go ahead. They've tried it already. He got blown out of the water. Try what? And he's not doing it to be tyrannical. Try what? What are you going to do to me? He's doing it because he knows they have nothing. But they're going to keep hammering away. And if more Americans watch the lamestream media and get their news from the lamestream media, of course they're going to have a disproportionately unfavorable picture of Donald Trump. And when they're polled like this, they're going to say, well, I don't think he's doing a real good job. All this news is real bad coming out about his administration. So and again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't vote for him. And I'll take each law, each bill, each tweet separately and on its own face. I don't agree with everything he's doing. But there are some things he's doing I applaud. That doesn't mean I support Trump. I support some of the policies. And again, this all goes into this using our words and knowing what we don't know, and searching out other sources that we can look at the news with and hopefully come up with some semblance of the truth. And sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a long while to do that. But if you're going to be, in my opinion, if you're going to be a good citizen in America, you need to inform yourself. And you need to make sure, if you're using a news source, you need to look up every now and then and make sure that they're actually reporting what's truthful and not doing a biased hit job on somebody. And again, I use One American News Network for my TV viewing. I use cnsnews.com on the website. I use a bunch of, and yes, they are more right-leaning websites for reading the news and coming up with my thoughts and ideas on the news. But I also read other ones too: Mother Jones, Salon, Slate, HuffPo, some of these other ultra-liberal sites that I come across in articles. I read, what they're saying. Yesterday we were talking about Let America Vote, and I seen another article that they had, and it was about Alabama, and nothing in this article said anything to their readers. It was a newspaper article out of, I think it was out of Birmingham, Alabama. Not mentioning one thing about the mobile DMV units that they put in place down in Alabama, where people they'll come to your place, or they'll come to your community, and you get a bunch of people together that don't have IDs and do it. And as far as I'm concerned, I left this message on her. I haven't heard anything back. All these states have voter ID laws bend over backwards to make sure that people can get, especially if they can't afford an ID, can get an ID so they can vote. And at this day and age, especially if you're voting in that, you should know what's going on around you. This day and age, if you don't have an ID to vote and you're in a state that has a voter ID law, it's your fault, not the state's. And not everybody, but I would say that there is a portion of the folks who don't have ID laws in these states, and some of these laws have been around for years now, were just too lazy to go do so. Sorry to say that. They're just too lazy to go get their voter IDs, and now they're using that. The groups like Let America Vote are using that as whipping fences to put their favorite political targets on and whoop them with, and they never tell you the whole truth. You have to be aware of that. I try to get these videos, but for some reason CNN, especially with cnsnews.com or Daily Wire or these other right-wing news sources, they disable the videos. They won't allow them to show them. And then you go over to their news site, CNN site on YouTube, you can't find them. You can't even find them over there. So it's like, what's the guy to do? And I think sometimes they just take the videos down completely because they get hosed by these. CNN worries tax bill will help GOP. Hint at conspiracy theory. Republican Debbie Dingell, Democrat Michigan, appeared on CNN's New Day on Tuesday to talk about whether Democrats would work with President Donald Trump on his agenda in 2018, and was greeted with a conspiracy-minded CNN host. Toward the end of the segment, CNN host Allison Camerota, however you want to pronounce that, brought up the recent GOP tax bill that Trump signed into law and how numerous businesses are giving their employees bonuses and raising the minimum wages at their companies because of it. Camerota then suggested that companies were scamming their employees because, according to her, they could have afforded the bonuses and pay increases before the tax bill, but chose not to. Well, that's because they were probably sheltering some of that money away from taxes. And this is almost, she's almost lamenting, it sounds like, the fact that the government can't control these businesses. Obviously, they could have done this before the tax overhaul was announced. They were sitting on profits, but they didn't, Camerota said. They did it when the tax overhaul was announced, and I'm wondering if you, as a Democrat, are worried about the wind in their sails. People vote their pocketbook. I don't have to tell you this. So if you just get a $1,000 bonus, you're voting for Donald Trump again, Camerota continued. Camerota offered no evidence to back up her claims, as she then went on to suggest that this was about helping the GOP in 2018, since the supposed tax increases wouldn't happen until years from now. And again, we don't even know what's going to happen next year. Maybe after the midterms next year, let's just give a for instance. The GOP has bigger gains in the House and the Senate, not less. Let's say they don't lose seats. Let's say they gain seats. What's going to stop them from revisiting this tax bill and making some of and actually reducing it even more and taking any type of sunset out of any of the bills they put in there and actually maybe accelerating some of the tax cuts? What's to stop them from doing that? And if businesses, this just shows the ignorance. And this is something that you can educate yourself out of, but just the woeful lack of ignorance on how businesses run. You know, businesses have to plan ahead. They have to try to, they make budgets just like everybody else. They got to figure out what they're going to spend their money on. They want to expand their operations so they get a bigger share of the market that they're in, you know, whatever, right? And they can't do that with the government changing taxes all the time. Or, you know, putting a new regulation in that costs them more, because regulations are a tax too. Well, here you got a president that's not only cutting regulations, but assigns a tax bill in there to cut taxes. This is a win-win for corporate America, which I applaud. And so, yeah, they were just waiting to see what was happening to this president. Give him a chance, see what happens. Because what would have happened if he didn't get the tax bill back, the tax bill passed? It would have been the status quo. And they probably wouldn't have given out the bonuses now. But since you got the double whammy of less regulations and less taxes, in their future budgets, they can see where they have this room that they can give bonuses to folks they haven't given bonuses to for years. And again, what business is it of CNN, Democrats, or the government if and when they employers give bonuses to their employees? They're bonuses, not part of the regular salary. They're not part of the regular benefits package. They are a bonus above and beyond. That's unexpected. So again, where's the exploitation of these workers? And to hear tell some people out there, we have the most exploited employees in the world here in the United States of America. Now here's another one from the Daily Wire. Moron alert. Democrat claims Trump trying to shut down entire government to become tyrant. And again, this is on one of those other cable networks, MSNBC. Representative Jackie Speier, Democrat California, claimed on Tuesday that President Donald Trump is trying to become a tyrant because she thinks he is systematically trying to shut down every possible branch of government but the presidency. Speier made her illogical and factually inaccurate comments while appearing on MSNBC's Live with host Katie Tour to talk about Trump's criticisms of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, an investigation that has not produced a shred of evidence of the collusion with Russia that Democrats claim it to exist. And to this day, they still claim this, folks. Stop the reading there, okay? They still claim this, and we're still wasting taxpayer dollars on investigating this. I'm concerned that the President of the United States is systematically trying to shut down every possible branch of government but the presidency, Speier said. You have him attacking the judiciary. You have him attacking the CIA. You have him attacking the Department of Justice, the FBI. This is the conduct of someone who would become a tyrant if we don't stop or step in and speak out against him, Spire continued. I think he is being so unpresidential and his undermining the very foundation of this country and the institutions that we hold so dear and are protected by the Constitution of the United States. I love it when Democrats haul out the Constitution of the United States. We're going to get a little constitutional with you here, folks. Please tell me, in the enumerated powers of the United States of America, does the Department of Justice, the FBI, or the CIA exist? Now, you could say the CIA could be part of the Defense Department. I think you can make a rational argument for that. However, that would be a duplication of intelligence agencies that are in each branch of the military. Where in the Constitution, and me and my son had this discussion on Christmas Day, is the authorization for most of the government. And again, it's a wrong or misleading reading of the Constitution that these folks have. Now, my son's an intelligent man. At least I raised him that way, to be intelligent, to be inquisitive. But even he, when it comes to the Constitution, was listening to the wrong people about it. People that the only time they ever bring out the Constitution of the United States is when they think it'll benefit them. When Nancy Pelosi was asked about where in the Constitution does authorize the federal government to have anything to do with our health insurance or health care, and she goes, well, I'm not a constitutional scholar. You'd have to ask a constitutional lawyer that. No. You took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And if you took an oath to uphold and defend that, especially uphold it, isn't it reasonable that you read it, maybe studied it, and understand it? Because Nancy Pelosi, of course, she doesn't make sense most time anyway. But whenever she hauls out the Constitution, she has no clue. But she uses it more for a billy club than she does for what it was actually designed for. And you got to love Spire saying the same thing. All these institutions we hold so dear are protected in the Constitution. And she brings it out, and there's going to be people that'll believe her. That's the sad part about it. They won't even investigate it. They have such faith in Representative Jackie Spire that they're just going to believe her. Just out of hand. They won't even go research to see if what she said is so. And that is a huge problem that we have here in the United States when it comes to any policy matters. Too many people just believe without verifying what they're believing in. It just, again, it irks me to no end. It really does. It really does. Look, we got a couple more things here before I get to the last article that I really want to get to. FBI used garbage dossier to get warrants to spy on America associated with Trump's campaign. And this article here is by, let me see here, by Michael Chapman over at cnsnews.com. Let me get into this. House Oversight Committee member Representative Jim Jordan, Representative of Ohio. And I don't have, no, I didn't put it up here. Let me get back over to my other camera here since we don't have that up there. Jim Jordan, Ohio, said he is convinced that FBI officials used the salacious and false dossier about Donald Trump paid for by the Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee to get warrants to spy on Americans associated with Donald Trump's campaign. And I'm convinced like he is. I think that's exactly what went on under the Obama administration. Okay. And again, I don't know how many different ways it has to be proven that the GPS dossier was fabricated, faked, made up. It has no truth in it whatsoever. Matter of fact, the more they dig into the Russian collusion, the more they're finding it's Hillary Clinton, Jill Stein. I just read an article. I didn't read it. I read the headline on Daily Wire talking about Manafort might be indicted a second time. I didn't even go read that, but, okay. He might be indicted a second time for maybe other lies he said to the FBI. and lies that had nothing to do with the collusion, just procedural lies that he committed. It's like unbelievable. There's a story by Amanda Preston Giacomo over at the Daily Wire, posted on December 27th. Pro racer apologized for saying little boys don't wear princess dresses. Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton found himself on the receiving end of liberal backlash after he posted a video wherein he told his nephew, who was dressed head to toe in princess attire, that boys don't wear princess dresses. Though Hamilton was clearly being playful with the little boy, the pro racer yanked the video off social media and issued a quick apology for possibly offending anybody. Yes, Dad was playing around with my nephew and realized that my words were inappropriate, so I removed the post, said Hamilton via Twitter. I meant no harm and did not mean to offend anyone at all. I love that my nephew feels free to express himself, as we all should. My deepest apologies for my behavior, as I realize it's not really acceptable for anyone, no matter where you are from, to marginalize or stereotype anyone. I have always been in support of anyone living their life exactly how they wish, and I hope I can be forgiven for this lapse in judgment. The problem I have with this apology is in the last sentence in his apology. I have always been in support of anyone to live their lives exactly how they wish, and I hope I can be forgiven for this lapse in judgment. This man, joking or whatever, made the statement that little boys don't wear princess dresses. Now, isn't that him living his life exactly how he wishes? And I posted this up on social media. And when I do the show every day, the articles that I use, I post on Facebook and Twitter, Gab AI, and Minds.com. And I post these up. And I posted on this one, the top, he said nothing wrong. His statement saying little boys don't wear princess dresses is not wrong. Because again, I've always been in support of anyone living their life exactly how they wish. And if that's what he thinks and that's what he expresses, he said nothing wrong. He had nothing to apologize for. And I'm telling you right now, in my opinion, little boys don't wear princess dresses. And I'm firm on that. They don't wear princess dresses, period. I know I'm not going to get the backlash that this guy's got, but again, I've always been in support of anyone living their life exactly how they wish. That's a two-way street, folks. That is a two-way street. And it irks me to no end that we live in such a social justice tyrant or tyrannical society that he feels the need to have to apologize for something that if he didn't mean it, he would have been thinking it in the first place and would have been playing around with his nephew saying it. Am I right or am I wrong? Let me know about this, because this, like I said, in our day and age, just this type of thing really irks me. Because the ones that are offended by what he said want to live the way they wish, live their lives exactly how they wish, but they don't afford the same opportunity for someone who has a different opinion than they do. And that's just not my America. I'm sorry. Just ain't. I'm not even going to read this. You can go to cnsnews.com. There's an article in there by Michael Chapman posted yesterday. Reverend Graham to Rosie. Hell is filled with people who rejected God's offers of salvation and rejected his love. This was over a Twitter battle between her and Ryan where, she says he's going to hell. And I'm just like, and here, this Rosie O'Donnell is the stereotypical gay person where divorce rates in the gay community are way higher than they are in actual life. She's been married twice. So they have a picture of her second ex-wife in there. But I won't go any further than that. You can go read that. The one I really wanted to get to, this is funny. This one is really funny. I thought it was really good. Shaq and Barkley. Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley ponder what to do with their Trump tax breaks in the middle of calling an NBA game. This is an article over to Free Beacon by David Roots. Posted December 26. NBA Hall of Famers Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley diverged from their game they called Christmas night to discuss the recent Republican tax overhaul and what they could do with their sizable tax breaks. And I'm going to play a video here for you. I got to do this, folks, because it's funnier in their own words than I could ever actually put it up there. Hang on just a second.
Adam Silver rolling over in his grave. You don't know what Chuck about to say during the game.
Hey, listen, Shrilla 2, whatever your name is. I'm hoping they fire me because they got to pay me. I'm trying to see what I can say to get fired.
If it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, you're right. We got that thing going in the White House right now. You can say any damn thing, and then we can't impeach you.
Didn't he invent Merry Christmas? That's what he said to that?
I know.
Merry Christmas. He said that.
Happy holidays, America. We can't say I miss the good old days.
Well, you can say Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Say Happy Holidays.
Yeah.
Clarkson was in traffic and followed his own miss.
But hey, at least we got our tax break.
Please don't go down that road again.
Hey, we can buy Rolexes like John Wall.
We heard it the other night.
I just want all these poor people to keep waiting home for this trickle down. They've been waiting for like 400 years. It ain't trickled down yet.
Get to the rim. Just finish it. There you go.
Kuzma will go to the line for a couple.
You like that tax break, Chuck?
Yeah, I don't like it for poor people.
NBA on TNT is
Rich people should not get tax breaks, Shaq.
brought to you by the 2018 Ford F-150. It doesn't just raise the bar, it is the bar. And by Burger King. Try the new $3.49 cheeseburgers meal deal today.
That's what we should do, Shaq. Without tax break, get us a truck and some hamburgers.
You want to do it? Let's do it. And you can own a dealership and a dealership. Chuck and Shaq's Big Boy Burgers. You can own a dealership and you can own with the tax break.
That's what we should do, Shaq.
Let's do it. Chuck and Shaq Big Boy Burgers. Yeah. $3.49.
What a can't miss idea that is.
Ernie. We full of them, Ernie.
Andrew Wiggins.
You're full of it.
Towns working on Nance. And this time shoots over and misses.
You know what? I would like to see Wiggins and Butler and the Towns all.
Folks, I thought that was funny. I mean, they're anybody who's anybody is getting a tax break. And my son, and now this is, again, I challenged my son to go out and look up some different sources. Wherever he's getting his news from isn't working for him. Because he said that if a guy is making $14,000 on minimum wage, he has to pay 10% tax on that. I said, no. I said, in the tax plan, they kept that provision in there that your first, I have to go look at the numbers. It's either 12 or 14,000. Your first 12 or $14,000 you make, you don't get taxed on. So if you're only making, let's say it's 14,000. If you're only making 14,000, guess what? You don't have any taxes to pay on that. So that is a win-win for you. And he just didn't believe me. He said, there's no way. I said, well, it's in there. It was one of the cornerstones of that they kept in there. And a married couple gets $24,000. So it might be 12 and 24. And I said, so a married couple, me and your mom, we get anybody, single or married, anybody, no matter what your income level is, your first $14,000 or $26,000, depending on your marital status, is tax. It's not taxed, period. So I said that's another bracket that no one on the left actually seems to be talking about. And I don't know where he got his tax calculator at. Now he's single, he works for a railroad, makes really good money. So his tax burden is going to be higher because he's not married. And he said he's only going to see $200 extra all year in his taxes. And I said, I don't believe that. But I said, maybe. I said, you're single. And I said, you don't have the marriage tax deduction and stuff like that. You don't have any kids. So, yeah, it could be. It could be only 200. But I said, it's 200 more than you had before. Well, it goes away with inflation and everything. And he said the tax cuts don't help with deficits, and I don't want to get into everything about that. And I, explained to him a couple more points about how when the taxes were lowered under Ronald Reagan, that the revenue to the Treasury increased every year of his presidency, every year, not just a couple bucks. It substantially increased. So if you made the budget static, there basically wouldn't be a deficit, a budget deficit, because they would have tax cutted their way out of that. Now, hopefully they go back in after the first year and start working on spending cuts, and that'll make it even better. That'll make it even better, because right now they're not working on a budget yet. They're still working on, the government's still functioning on continuing resolutions. But I just thought, just to end the show there on that, I thought that that with Shaq and Charles Barkley, I thought that was funny to sort of end the show with, because they were, and you're talking about two rich guys. And they got families and everything, and they're going to get a substantial tax break. They already have, by that. So they're going to be in a way lower tax bracket, so they're going to be saving a lot of money. And the biggest argument is, well, the rich don't need a tax break. But the rich are the ones that make this country work. Well, they're just going to take that money and hoard it into banks. No, they're not. How do you think rich people got rich? They didn't get rich by putting their money in a mason jar and burying it in the backyard or putting it into a passbook savings account at some bank. They invest it. There are firms out there that you can invest money in that are venture capitalists that you can earn 10 to 15% on your whatever you invest in them. And all over the place. There are investments all over the place that they can put their money to work. That's how they became rich. You don't become rich by just working an hourly job or even a wage job. You become well-to-do or rich by putting the money you earn to work for you. That. Again, the lamestream media out here has everything messed around, and nobody knows what's going on, or not enough people know what's going on, and that they're being lied to by the lamestream media. And you have to, if you come away with this program with nothing else, you have to understand where you're getting your news from. You have to understand their biases. And for goodness sake, check them out and verify what they're saying is true. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Make sure you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on the video. And if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button and leave the notification button so I have new videos out. You know that they're there. And by all means, leave a comment. I don't care if they're positive or negative. And I am looking for patrons for the show to help me to build the show, help me support myself and the show financially, so we can grow the show into the best Christian political talk show there is on the internet. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon.